Hello, everyone. It is Saturday morning here in Korea, which means there are 2 matches left in First Stand, which means it's time to check in with First Stand in the Monte Wolf Show. dGon here alongside Mr. First Stand himself, Wolf. Welcome, everyone. And how you doing, brother? Like, how's the event been?
It's been fun. It's kind of a weird event. It's a little bit different than other international events where it's so short that like at one of the older MSI formats, for example, at this part of the tournament, you'd be like, okay, now play-ins are done. Thank God. Like okay, now we can go to the good games. Whereas this is just kind of like the whole tournament is almost over. And we're moving into semifinals. It goes straight from groups to top four. So it felt like it's gone by really fast. And then with Fearless on top of the very little prep time and fast turnaround for all these teams who basically only have one rest day each, so you're constantly playing back to back to back. It's felt chaotic, and I think that's what some people want. Some people want that fearless and crazy games and crazy drafts, and lots of action. I feel like the game quality hasn't been that high, but remember, it's still very early in the year. It's not like MSI where you have a whole giant split beneath you before you go to MSI where you have built up all that synergy. So I don't know, it's been fun. I feel like it's really hit the mark for what it was supposed to be as a tournament. The first one, everything's weird, nothing's figured out, and get a good flavor for what all the regions are going to look like against each other.
Yeah. Well, you as well, just getting the opportunity to go back to international event. How does that feel? I just want to touch on this because I feel like audience might understand where you work really hard in your local region, and then to get the opportunity to do an international event, a Riot international event, is like a goal. It's like a goal. It's a bonus that you get to do, and it's something that we all work towards, and you're getting to achieve that. How does that felt professionally for you?
Well, I mean, my thing about international events is I always love working with the other talent from around the world and seeing like what they think. And often since I'm the new guy for League especially, I kind of just take a back seat and see what everyone else is doing and kind of try to vibe with them a little bit. Um, Unfortunately, so far I've only really worked with Dracos because I did a desk with Dracos and Ox, who I work with regularly. I cast with Atlas, so there hasn't really been that much. New like I haven't worked with Kobe directly. I mean, we've been in the same room together, we've collaborated a little bit, but like I haven't been on a desk with him just yet. I also feel like this tournament's so short, I'm a part of it, but it's everyone's not really that much of a part of it because it's so fast. I do kind of feel like Steve Carell getting the award, with the awkward like handshake where it's like, oh, okay, like congratulations, Wolf, you're invited to an international. I'm like, yeah, I'm the guy who lives in Korea and doesn't have to be flown in, and I cast one game, like, handshake kind of thing. Uh, I did it. I cast one game. Valdez cast one game. We did it. But yeah, it's been cool. It's been fun. It feels funny having all the Riot NA and EU people in Law Park. It feels like I don't know how to put this like in any other way, but like it almost feels like another nation has like taken over a castle in Game of Thrones or something, and like they're not familiar with the environment, and then like everyone who's like the nation is taken over, like in our case like the LCK, I'm like, oh, I can help you guys like figure out where coffee is. I can help you use this machine because you guys don't speak Korean, and I'm trying to like help people out, but also like I'm like, hey, we have this thing we could use. We normally do this, and there's kind of like this feeling of like we don't do that now. I'm like, but it's right there, and like we have it, and like it's LCK, and they're like, yeah, but it's an international event. It's not. We're not doing that. We're not using that. Well, okay, so that's okay. Like because of all the insane technology that they use, like we have to send things back to Europe, and then it comes back to the feeds that we're on. There's a lot of
Yeah.
crazy stuff happening, and a lot of the tools that we would normally use we just can't use because they need to use that space for something else. And so it's felt really familiar at Law Park, but also um it feels like I don't know, Law Park is taken over, you know what I mean? And not in a
Yeah.
bad way, it just feels like that. Like it's unfamiliar for the people who are in Law Park, and the people who are in Law Park who are familiar with things can't access those things.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I did go in one day to just say hi to friends and say hi to a lot of the international talent, the Western talent and production folk and people that I've known through my career in LoLEsports. And it the castle being taken over kind of feels like a really good description, but also taking it over. How's the Carmine Corp fans been for you? Because I obviously interfaced with them directly when we watched Hanwha versus KC, and I was, they're out there chanting and cheering, and the Hanwha Life fans outside in the lobby were just sitting politely, quietly, and then every now and then I would shout, "Hanwha fighting!" Like all the Hanwha fans were just terrified that I said anything when like the KC like players died on screen, because like there were like 60, 70 of them just like quiet and
So
wanting to chant.
it's it's a different cultural way of supporting your team than what Korean fans are used to. So I think it feels a bit boisterous. I would say for some people it comes off a bit, I wouldn't say rude, but like quite brash to the Korean fans. I think with the Korean fans seeing it, they're like, can you guys maybe be like a little bit less, loud
French.
in
Oh
French?
yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Because like I think for Koreans, a lot of Koreans have a different idea about like what foreigners are, and like what foreigners would act like because they watch movies, right? And most of them haven't traveled overseas. They haven't been outside of Korea, and a lot of them haven't interacted with many foreigners in general. And so they see like a bunch of KC fans just yelling and chanting and screaming, and just kind of like nonstop, and sometimes at moments that don't feel like it's not even like during a game. They're just like yelling between games, which is not really how Korean fans cheer. So I think for them it's come off a little bit weird, but I think that they're not necessarily look at it like it's rude or something. They're just like, huh, I guess they're really loud and that's what they do over there. Like it might be like the general consensus. I haven't interacted with too many of them myself because I've been, backstage, but I've seen them around. I think it's
Yeah.
cool to have a different fan vibe in Lol Park than what we've really ever had before. So I kind of celebrated. Obviously, they are fortunate enough to make it into top four because of the scenarios that happened yesterday. So they get to keep cheering and keep supporting, and that's cool because they're one of our biggest fan bases worldwide, right? In League of Legends, I've seen a lot of people saying that they've had negative interactions with KC fans on Twitter. I know Captain Flowers has dealt with some shit with them.
He
People have told
did?
me yeah. Well, apparently they're like reporting his tweets or something. And he's had to deal with that. He tweeted about it. He told me about it. Um, I think he stirred the pot with them a little bit. I don't know. I've been told they're similar to T1 fans, and that if they latch onto you, if they're upset with you, they might really send you a bunch of angry messages or tweet at you a lot. I haven't experienced any of that. I've only seen really positive and nice things from them so far. But I also haven't been engaging in any sort of like bashing of them. I only desked them once and then talked about their win cons when I wasn't casting them. So like there's no reason why they would be upset with me. I have no bias in the EU versus NA kind of race either. So I haven't dealt with anything negative from them, but I've heard they can be quite annoying if you make them upset. So that hasn't been the case for me though.
Yeah. I mean, I brought it up a little bit on Power Spike, but the LOL, you would understand this better. The LOL Park staff had like a talk with like the leadership of the fan group. There were like 3 or 4 fans that kind of like all organized because they meet not in LOL Park because they are asked to not block the lobby, and rather than just kind of hang out in the lobby or like do the activations, they just wait until 5 minutes before game start, and then they come and then they stand in front of one of the screens outside of LOL Park, and then they go. So they were like talking with them, and it felt pretty clear that like the LOL Park staff were laying down some ground rules, like, hey, stop jumping. Unfortunately, they were cheering and they have chants, but also they have songs, and I understand that. Like again, I am a retired soccer football professional. Like I understand having ultras and having that is part of it, but the songs would be distracting to everyone in LoL Park, and I feel like the Korean culture way is like, hey, you can do whatever you want as long as it doesn't infringe on anyone else. But like the singing during the event would infringe on anyone else that isn't an ultra, and it's not the environment for it. Because I went to FC Seoul game. I went to an FC Seoul, the soccer team here in Korea, and their ultras were doing exactly that. Right environment, stadium, home
Yeah.
team, like all that.
When that's the
LoL
vibe, that's
Park,
the
that's
vibe.
not. that's not quite the vibe there. And to their credit, they did listen and follow through with it. And even, yeah, like I think the way that they behaved on that day 4 was totally fine and within their rights. And they were super loud. They were super hype in the comeback, like every step of the way. Like it was awesome. Like it was great to have that. But there are a couple people. There was like someone holding the fan sign up, like in front of like the fan cam that they set up for him. And it's just like, come on, guys, like that's not what it's for. Like let's be part of the game. Don't be the game, right? So
Yeah, I mean when you're jumping around and stuff too, and we have a bunch of nice screens and things over there, like somebody could get hurt, but somebody could like actually fall over into like a $200,000 screen that's set up that people use to watch the games all throughout the LCK regular season, and it's like, okay, who's gonna pay for that? What's gonna happen? Like I think setting some ground rules does make sense.
Yeah, but that has been one of the new additions here to Lol Park and to First Stand. Last one I wanted to touch on because you had to experience it a little bit. Let's overlay talk, man. What you had to cast on it? Like, are you casting on the overlay? Are
Oh,
you
the
casting on a
overlay.
clean
So
feed?
yeah, we do cast over the same feed that everybody else sees.
Oh
The first
God.
day of the overlay. Let me preface this briefly by saying, like, everybody knows Wolf. If you know me for a long time, I hate change always. I'm like, no, the tradition is better. I don't want anything to be changed. We had it one way, everything was working fine. Don't fuck it up. Don't fuck with it. Don't change it. So normally I'm the guy who's like 100% everyone's like, oh, Wolf is gonna hate this. But when I saw the announcement of the UI initially and looked at it, I was like, this actually feels very sports central, especially like the scoreboards at the top left. I was like, oh, this looks like something I'd see in an NFL scoreboard kind of thing in terms of that. Like it looks very clean, it's very small. And then the way that the things were laid out in the bottom of the screen, I was like, oh, this is good. I think it's going in the right direction. I knew it definitely wasn't ready, but I was like, it's going in the right direction. So I was already kind of positive about it. And then on day 1, when I started watching, I was like, oh fuck, man, I can't see anything. I can't see anything at all. It seemed cool at first, but now I'm like, no, this is terrible. But they've made some big changes to it. I think making the health bars smaller was the biggest and best change they made. I still think there's a lot missing. Like some things that annoy everyone else that are super obvious is like the rotating objectives. Like you can't always know what dragon is and stuff. Besides that, also, for me, something that annoyed me is that there's no space in the UI to show the team's current score line, like showing Hanwha Life at 3-0, for example. And where their thing is there's just not enough space to put that, and where do you put it otherwise? And then the other thing that I wish they would change, and Raz suggested this actually in one of our feedback sessions, and I think they had a lot of positive feedback from it, so I think they probably will do it, is that the CS is like very far apart from each other, so telling a lane advantage is much more difficult than it used to be. I wish that they would actually push that to the center and then move the player portraits, which shows, which champions they are and all that, and their health bars a little bit more out. Just kind of swap those and put the CS in the middle, like it traditionally is. So you could have the CS next to each other, and then right in between that you have the gold difference. So like CS, gold difference, CS. I think they'll probably eventually do that so that you can visually see more clearly what the CS advantages are.
Yeah.
But when I told Max this, I was like, I know I'm gonna fuck something up because it's my first time doing it, and I was very nervous about it because I was like, oh, it's a whole new UI, it's gonna be tough. I don't think anyone really noticed, but I actually got one thing wrong in one of the games I was casting. I thought feats of strength were secured for a team already, but actually they had just gotten like one of them, and they were close to getting the second one. But like I was pretty sure they got, so I said it several times that they had feats of strength. And like, sometimes when you say as a caster, you're like, I'm pretty sure they got 4 grubs, and you look and you're like, yeah, they got 4 grubs. You're like, yeah, they have 4 grubs, but like this UI is, because of the rotating objectives, you just kind of have to trust yourself and be right, or like just wait and not say it until you can hard confirm it. And you're waiting for a while, so like sometimes you got to take this like leap of faith that you're pretty sure you're right, you remembered it right. And that was the hardest part about it, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen someone, they took their monitor and they flipped it vertical and showed it, and it looks actually super perfect if it's vertical. It even though the size of the gameplay is obviously smaller, it fits perfectly. So great job right? But people aren't looking at things vertically on their PC. And although it fits better on the phone, which is like consistent feedback, it's too small to read like the numbers like very, very well. But then when you watch it, regular landscape, left to right, hamburger, not hot dog, it's or is it hot dog, not hamburger? I don't remember. When you look at it
Yeah, it is
regularly,
hot
it
dog.
just feels like
Yeah,
a number.
it's hamburger. Yeah, when you look at regularly, I think sometimes change happens. Like the LCK logo changed for no reason, but people want to
Yeah.
rebrand. They want to do something fresh, and like research has shown that like when you do these rebrands and stuff, it creates a lot of buzz and conversation and attention, and like that's also something that it can be negative attention, but sometimes any attention actually brings more eyes to your thing, and everyone's like, "Oh, this is new. It's new, 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 new." Even though it's not necessarily better, this kind of feels
Yeah.
like that for me. Like I don't feel like this UI is gonna bring new players to the game or anything. Like it's not gonna be like where we look back and go, damn, that was when they fixed the UI. Remember the old one? That one was shit. I think people will look back at the old one when it appears and be like, oh, I'm very nostalgic for that one and I miss it because I think that one was better. Um, but like they changed it and this is what we have now. If somebody asked me right now, like, would you like to go forward with this and keep tweaking this one, or would you like to keep the old one? I'd be like, let's go back to the old one. Everybody knows it. Everybody's great with it. Like it's all the information is there. We already know this. Everyone's familiar with this. But instead, I think everyone's just gonna have to get used to this new one and keep giving feedback, and they're gonna keep changing it, and it'll get better. I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it was necessary at all. I don't think anybody felt like they needed this, but like I said, research
Yeah.
has shown that when you just change things like this and you try to iterate and you try to make things better, people talk about it, and like there were a million threads about it, so everyone's looking at it. I mean, it created some weird, maybe negative, but still buzz for First Stand as a result.
I like the idea of the bug in the top left corner. Like it just looks clean. It reminds me of sports. That feels very easily a skinnable for the event, right? If you have an MSI bug and all that stuff, rather than doing a whole different like looking skin every time. So the overall idea of doing it was great. The execution of it was this is pretty not good, and that is what all the buzz has been. So I was just wondering what it has been like casting without having all the information there for you was like. So thanks for that insight
The one
and
thing about the
on the event
bug
so far.
The
Yeah,
one thing about the bug being top left that's weird as a caster is like I felt like we talked about kills versus kills or what this kill scoreline was so much more, and I think this is a trend for every cast for this event that people didn't talk about as much. They're just not looking at it as much.
yeah,
The same with the gold difference, because I think in League, unlike like football where a ball is like flying across the screen, someone's throwing, and like the center of the action is normally like the action is normally fairly centered, but it moves out of center and then gets reframed and stuff. The League of Legends team fights and everything that's happening when you're watching two people laning each other, it all happens right in the center of your screen. So for the UI to have everything on the top made more sense because you're like looking at a electrocute proc from an Ari and she's trading, and then you just look directly up. But it feels like you're kind of turning your eyes away from what's happening to see what's happening in the bug. So that will take some time to get used to for me for sure. Like I felt like I never was really 100% sure what the kill score was until I like had to actively like grab my face and look at it. But I think
yeah.
it looks clean, and it will ultimately, once everyone gets used to it, be better.
Let us know in the comments what you think about the new bug and if you've noticed the improvements on it. Obviously, everyone noticed it was bad. But if you notice it got better, I noticed like the gold difference between the roles like started popping up later, and like yeah, it's moving in the right direction. But it feels like they're only fixing one thing at a time when they've got like 10 to fix. All right. Before we move on to the next topic and dive into some big news that hit outside of First Stand, I got to remind you about our friends over at Raycon with active noise cancellation capable of drowning out the most maddening noise. Raycon's everyday earbuds are your quieting sidekick for the gym, work, or phone calls, offering premium audio that goes where you go. Obviously, you've heard me talk about Raycon, where I lost mine, bought another pair. My parents came recently, and even they figured out how to connect it to their mobile device, which is crazy because they're very technology illiterate. Their latest model is better than ever with a 32-hour battery life and multi-point connectivity that allows them to pair 2 devices at once. And speaking of battery, Raycon's quick charge function, just 10 minutes of charging yields 90 minutes of battery, and Raycons start at just half the price as other premium audio brands with similar features, which include the active noise cancellation, multiple different hearing modes, multiple different level modes. It is a just great technology, all packed in with a great punch, and it comes with a ton of different colors and styles. Again, I have like the periwinkle looking one. It is cool. People were like, "Why'd you get that color?" I was like, "Because it looks like nothing else that I've ever seen." They also have red, shiny blue, black, white, but that one lets me stand out a little more in the way that they like. And if you're not liking the Raycons, they offer a 30-day happiness guarantee return policy. No questions asked here, Wolf.
That's right. I mean, for me, super obvious bang for your buck. Like if you're looking for some earbuds, they have a lot of features. They're not too expensive, super durable, great battery life. I carry them with me anywhere, that I go, because you never know when you're gonna need to listen to something quietly. We were talking about the KC fans earlier and stuff. One thing Koreans really don't like is people who have their YouTube on or something on their phone without putting earbuds in and like are playing it on the train. Someone will come over and tell you to turn that off. You got to have your earbuds on you all the time. Raycons are super durable, so put them in your back pocket. Nothing bad's going to happen to them. They're not going to die. They're not going to run out of battery either, because they last so long.
Yeah, head on over to buyraycon.com/M&W to get 20% off the best-selling everyday earbuds. Brought to you by Raycon. That is buyraycon.com/M&W. Thanks to our friends over at Raycon for making Monte Wolf and Last Free Nation happen. All right. Did you hear the news, Wolf? They said they watched Riot. They watched our last episode and heard you say they'll never override us, since they told the teams that they are definitely not doing Fearless for the rest of the year. And the murmurs started shaking. The Korean journalists started picking up, Wolf, and next thing you know, Fearless has been mandated for all regions for the rest of the year.
So
I don't know why.
So as far as I know, like as far as I've seen, I could be wrong, and this might actually be different by the time this episode fully releases. But like, I think it's only the Sheep Esports that's reported on this thus far. Like, I don't think it's been officially announced by Riot, but everyone I've talked to behind the scenes is telling me that this is true. Like, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that this decision has been made and was made, like, not even like yesterday or 2 days ago, but like they decided basically as these tournaments were ending, like, okay, we're doing this, the fans like it. Look, you and I have made our case about why we don't like Fearless as much, and the game quality has gone down, etc., so many times. And I don't think we need to rehash all of that. I've talked to a few teams and like people about this. Like, what do you feel? Do you feel like this is, changes how you would have built a roster? Because that was kind of my big concern, is like the rules were set, now they're being changed, and that's like that's not a precedent you want to set. But most teams are like, look, Fearless seems to be better for viewership, and more fans who might watch more games because they want to see. There's one more chance we might get another Vladimir top game, so people are watching more hours. So most teams are just like, look, we got to get more viewers, we got to get more sponsors, we got to get more money. League of Legends is in trouble. So like esports in general is in trouble. So most teams are like, I don't think it's competitive integrity wise the right choice, but like we got to keep the ship afloat, we got to pay the bills. So that's kind of been the reaction I've seen from most people. And if the team, like I said also when we talked about this, if the teams are okay with it, if the teams are like, look, we need this or we want this, then like, I guess even though I don't necessarily like it, and I think that the level of play goes down drastically, and I think we have so much proof of that. Maybe at the end of the day, the highest level gameplay isn't what people want. Like, remember the viewership for like Los Ratones playing in the NLC finals was insanely high. There was a ton of interest in this, and like these are some retired players who unretired a streamer. You know what I mean? Like, this is a team of people who are obviously very talented at the game, but I think a lot of their popularity comes from the fact that Cadril is coaching this team. all of these players are very popular in stream, etc., etc., and like viewership is insane. Would they take a single game off of like any LCK team? Probably not. But like people are watching them, right? So I think maybe the future of League of Legends, as much as we on this show are like all about the high level play, we're so hardcore, we want to see the best. Like maybe the future of League of Legends we're finding out this year and over the last like 6 months might not be best level of play is the most important thing. That's scary for me. Like I don't necessarily
Yeah.
like that. I really don't. But like if the fans like it and that's the future of the game and that's the direction of the game, then it does seem like it's the right choice as much as I hate it. So maybe by the end of the year, the gameplay will get closer to where it was as people adjust to Fearless. That's like the copium take. That's like what Chronicler's always telling me. You know, that's the take
Yeah.
where you're like, yeah, they'll get better. Don't worry, it'll be fine. But yeah, I've kind of as soon as I before like because I had people behind the scenes telling me that that was gonna happen before it got leaked by Sheep Esports, and I kind of just I've been trying to accept it, and I don't want to be the guy who complains about Fearless all year long after like we've known about it for a long time. I don't want to be like the guy who in August is like, dude, imagine if it wasn't Fearless, because like it's done, like the decision's been made, and I don't want to cry about it anymore. But like it is what it is, and you guys are all just gonna have to get used to it too. But there are good things about it, and if the fans like it, maybe it'll get us out of esports win, or at least prolong prolong the life of this game. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. I didn't know until recently, so I'm just starting my denial phase. But yeah, takes across the internet being like, it's good for viewership, so this is the way it moves forward. It just, I hate that. But it is what it is. As you said, cheap esports with the leak and the break, and we'll see if that fully goes through or not. But I mean, it just seems like it's likely. Uh, side note, theoretically, it should make Western teams that play a lot of wacky stuff even better, right? It should give them a chance to make it on in, right? When they make it to international events, kind of like Team Liquid, right? Fearless should be good for a team that plays weird stuff. And that's where we're gonna go first here as we look into First Stand Wolf. Team Liquid. We'll get to Hanwha Life. We'll get to everyone else, but I have to start there because I've actually gotten in a little bit of trouble with Dom. Dom asked me, "Hey man, are are you like supporting LCK or North America? When FlyQuest played Gen G, were you supporting NA or North or LCK?" And I was like, I supported FlyQuest until Game 5. Then I was like, there are major ramifications of not having Gen G make it on forward.
Yeah.
And so, with TL, it's like, okay, this is a for fun tournament. I'm totally fine with TL like winning. Like that'd be great. I, but the inverse is not true. I'm not okay with them getting last place because it's a for fun tournament. That hurt a lot. And they just, with it all looked so good. The NA over EU narrative was still alive and well at the beginning of the tournament. We got to meme back not just EU, because I love my G2 boys. Like they're great. Love the org, love the social media manager. But it was KC. It was like, oh my God, it's even better. And then they never looked the same after that, man. What happened? What happened?
I mean, I don't want to get too into the weeds of this, but like one of my issues with this tournament, obviously it's very small and there's not a lot of great ways you can make a format with 5 teams that makes sense.
Sure.
But like the fact that we're all going like which 1-3 team is going to be eliminated. We have 3 teams that are 1-3, and 2/3 of the teams that are 1-3 go into not just a bracket stage. Not it's like they made it playoffs. They go into semifinals. So like it feels like we have kind of like the tournament already decided. You know what I mean? Like it's already like, okay, well, Hanwha is definitely the best, and we know that clearly because we did one round robin where Hanwha dunked on everybody.
Yeah.
But also some of those weaker teams might have a chance to lose to them again. I'm like, oh, this isn't very exciting. But going back to Hanwha's dominance and then like TL at the bottom, I'm not gonna say that this is true. Okay, I'm not gonna say that this is what was happening. I'm not gonna say that like I think Hanwha did a controversial thing. I'm not gonna say I think Hanwha was losing on purpose. But
Okay.
like the fans did say it, dGon. They did say, Oscar performance. They did say like, what the fuck was that draft, Hanwha? That shit makes no sense. They did say like, wow, it really looks like Hanwha don't want China to be top 4. Okay, they did say those things. Everyone is saying those things. Okay, I didn't say it. I didn't say I think Hanwha was trying to lose on purpose, but a lot of people did because the gameplay was not very good. The gameplay was not very good from Hanwha. The drafting was not very good. They did seem like they were, as we say politely on the broadcast, happy gaming. As we say on the podcast, fucking around.
Oh my god.
And like Team Liquid, I felt so bad for them because it's your tournament life. You're trying not to get last place. And then the Korean team is just fucking around and they're still beating you. And I think Team Liquid has to know, like, deep in their heart of hearts, like, after game 1, like, it's like, we were so close. We had this in the bag. And they just beat us. It's like, I don't even have an analogy for this. It's just like Hanwha Life decided, now we're going to win. I don't know if you've ever seen the Smash Bros documentary where like the Korean player, I can't even remember his name off the top of my head right now. In the very beginning of the documentary, he plays against the camera guy, and then he like basically loses on purpose, and then the narrator says, and then he decides to try, and then he just like destroys the guy when he has 1 stock left. Like it's like that. And Hanwha just like they should have lost that first game, and I think as a result probably should have lost the series. But they didn't. And for Team Liquid, you saw the emotional players, obviously, afterwards. It's Impact, man. He's a legend, okay? Like, this guy is one of the most, like, in the past, was one of the most popular Korean players. Like, he was loved by Korean fans everywhere. And still, they follow him to, like, watch his journey in the LCS and stuff. It's Core JJ. You know what I mean? Like, this guy was a legend on Samsung. So many Korean fans of the old times love him. He's playing on stage in Korea. First time in a while, and then like this team is just fucking around and you can't win. Like that must have felt so horrible, and like even casting it, I'm like, this feels so bad. Like in game 1, I was like, oh, people are gonna be so mad at my casting because I'm glazing TL. The macro was good in the early game, the early game was great, the decisions were great, the draft was amazing, they had a lead. And then they lost. And like, if you don't know the game very well, or you don't know the situation, you might be watching and going like, why'd the casters say TL was gonna win, but then they didn't win? Because that's what happened. They were supposed to win.
They were supposed to win.
And like top esports gets top 4, but they haven't had really that many great games, to be honest, either. Like it doesn't even necessarily feel like they deserve to be there. So I don't know. The format really got weird there at the end, and unfortunately Team Liquid wasn't playing against like a weaker team in the one that they had to win in the end. It was the hardest team, and even though the hardest team seemed like, according to the fans, that they didn't want top esports to be in top 4, ultimately they still did have to win the game, and they did.
Yeah, I don't want to say this sets the region back, but this is the same team, right? This is the same team that we saw at EWC, at Worlds. Remember EWC? They like took games off of Faker. We're like, holy shit! Like APA, he's playing the map, he's playing the zigs, he's ulting the side waves. Like it's great. Remember at MSI, it was like, could they do it? Could they actually win? Like this is the same team, and it just like. I think the only player that looked great consistently was Jan, who, he looked very consistently. I think after that, APA, he had the Cassiopeia game there in game 2, but he had an up and down. I think Impact was okay, except when he needed to play Gwen. I think Umpty didn't rise to the occasion. I think there was an LPL, like remember, LPL English broadcast doesn't even exist anymore. I think there was an LPL official social media tweet making fun of Core JJ's Nautilus missing every single hook. It was like one of those like super cuts. Like I was like, geez, man, they've just buried Core.
I mean, in a
And
different
it just was tough. It was like tough, and it like hurt to watch as a North American fan. And you're thinking, you know, if this was Cloud9 with the young guys with Loki and Thanatos, and you know, like maybe that'd be it. You know, if it's FlyQuest, they would they would deep bigger into the fearless bag, and they'd be able to do something. If it's 100 Thieves, you got a little bit more firepower with Quid in the mid lane, and you know, a carry threat in the top lane with a sniper. Like those are the four teams that shuffle between North America. You're like, fuck, what is going on?
they consider that Impact was once considered the guy in the top lane. You know, it's been a long time since then. It's been many years. But he was like the best Korean top laner. And now Zeus is the best Korean top laner and the best top laner in the world. And like watching generationally, like Impact try to with a counterpick Jax beat Zeus on Mbessa, and Zeus just absolutely being like, yeah, you know, there's a release date diff kind of situation that people were joking about in the matchup and the Mbessa dashes, but it's kind of like date of birth diff. Like Zeus is like, I'm the new guy. I'm still in my prime. You're not. And unfortunately, like Impact is absolutely still a top tier player in terms of his own region, but like competing against the new generation of Korean pro, like he looked like he almost looked washed. You know what I mean? Because the level of play
Yeah.
right now is just so different between these two regions. And that's what's sad about it for me to watch these players, like even Umpty, you know, like who's had some ups and downs. It wasn't honestly his best performance, I would say, this tournament. Like we've seen way better from him in the past.
Yeah.
Like these players are all past their prime. They're, to say the word frankly, like imports, right? Like they're imports. They went to LCS. Like everyone always jokes like the LCK players go to LCS to retire and make like better salaries, but then also like not have to try that hard. But I think when you're a Korean player who has been to the top before, I wouldn't say
Yeah.
Umpty has in Korea, but like obviously Impact has and Core JJ has. To come back to Korea and be like, man, do these fans miss me? Like, are they looking forward to having me back here? Like, do these people still remember me? Like, this is where I made my start. Not at Law Park, actually, for them, but like at the OGN
Right.
studio. But to come back to Korea and then be playing against the Korean reps and just be completely outclassed like that, and then I don't know. I feel like that must really sting. Like if I were Core JJ, I'd be super emotional. If I was Impact, I'd be like, oh man, this makes me want to hang up the mouse and keyboard. You know, obviously they're pro gamers, they're professionals, they've been through a lot of hardships. Like this isn't probably going to be necessarily the hardest time they have, and they might have in their minds harder times they've had before. But
Yeah.
damn, that must really be something. Like that it's going to be a long flight home, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I mean, one of the best moments, and the moments I'll remember from this tournament as a, you know, NA fan is the hypercut of Umpty winning in a bro jersey, turning around to do his pose, and then when he dips his arm, it switches to the TL jersey. Like that was just awesome. And then to go from that at the beginning of the tournament where like anything is possible to like holy shit, they're just picking champions out of a hat and beating us is just rough. It's just rough, and it was sad. And yeah, I hope that I know that Core's a pro. I know that Impact. I know how he would take that. He'd be upset. He'll talk to himself a lot about it, and then he'll get over it. It's mostly Umpty I'm most worried about because he's the one that wants to win the most. He's the one that wants to get over the hump the most. He's the one that wants to prove it the most. That you know that one season on Bro wasn't, you know, just a flash in the pan, and you know it we'll see how it affects him and the rest of the squad for the rest of the year. Hopefully they make their way back to MSI again. NA only sending one from North America and one from LTA South. So it'll be a tough battle for them to get to international event after that, but we'll see. Okay. Damn.
That was somber. It
Yep.
was a little somber.
It's a little somber, and also like, it's just when Dom put me on the spot yet the other day on Power Spike. I did say LCK, but I think it makes it sting a little less when they lose, and this is how much it stings me. I can only imagine how much it stings everyone else. Like, it hurts a lot. Like, Flowers has to be a pro whenever like TL is just getting stomped, or Azale. How many times has Azale bit on the call or bit on the desk, and they just got to smile through it? Emily has to be a pro on the desk yesterday, just watching top esports completely fall apart, and then TL just not be able to get it over the hump. It just,
I mean, Aux is
it's
going to
just
be on the desk
pain.
today watching Hanwha dismantle TS and feeling a lot of feelings.
Yeah. Oh man. All right. Well, before we get to that, it's time to remind you about our friends over at Turtle Beach that make Monte Wolf Show go. Again, in case that you haven't heard, they came out with the Stealth 700 headset, which is one of the best in the industry. It has the industry's first ever cross-play dual wireless transmitter system. That means you can seamlessly switch between your console and PC with just the click of a button, and it gets even better while being connected to your console. The Stealth 700 can connect with your phone for music streaming or taking calls all at the same time. Listen to your favorite songs all while gaming, done with the Stealth 700. And Turtle Beach doesn't just stop with amazing headsets. They've got every gaming accessory you could ever want. They're all high quality prices that don't break the bank. From flight and racing simulators to controllers, keyboards, and mice, Turtle Beach is the ultimate cheat code. So head on over to turtlebeach.com right now and use the code MonteWolf for 10% off your entire order. That's 10% off your order at turtlebeach.com using the code MonteWolf. And after every purchase, I'll ask you where you heard about them. Please tell them Monte Wolf, Last Free Nation, sent you. Get the ultimate immersive gaming experience with Turtle Beach today. Thanks to our friends over at Turtle Beach. All right. Let's move from the somber to the dominant. Hanwha, Our Life Esports has looked by and far here, Wolf, the best team. And maybe that's because TL has they're fighting the ghosts of Law Park with 3/4 of their or 3/5 of their players, having been, LCK players at one point. Wait, is that accurate? Is that an accuracy? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Top esports. I don't just not being able to shake the international issues of choking. And CFO, although pretty good, that was when the styling from Hanwha Life Esports started, where they pulled out the Vlad and the Zed and just, they're like, Hunky was like, what's this champion do? Who is Zed? What is Vladimir? You're like, oh,
Yeah.
he's 17. Let's just hit him with a knowledge gap.
I will say, I think the one team that legit beat Hanwha, and it wasn't like Hanwha just fucking around, was when KC beat Hanwha. The KC game where KC had, in my opinion, a pretty, like, I don't want to say it's a horrible draft, but it's not a draft I particularly liked. I didn't feel like it had a lot of synergy. I didn't feel like it was very good into what Hanwha had. The Ivern comp that they ran, I was like, ooh, like Ivern needs to shield an AD carry that does a lot of shooting really fast. When I think about Ivern, the champ that comes to mind most often is like Tristana, where it's like, okay, she's going in, she's gonna shoot fast, she's gonna do a ton of burst damage. There's shields on her, so you can't kill her. Then she gets a restart. She starts jumping. Ivern puts another shield on her, and she just takes over the whole fight. Like Jin is kind of like, I'm sitting back, I'm shooting really far away. You don't need to shield me, Ivern, because nobody's anywhere close to me. Because if they are, I'm fucked. But I think that comp didn't really make that much sense to me. But how they played it, how aggressively Yike constantly chased people down, and how he pushed side lanes, how he used Daisy incredibly well. That was one of those games where I was like, oh, KC really are a smarter team than I think they've shown us a lot of the tournament. But besides that, I feel like the loss we saw from Hanwha against TL and the near loss we saw in game one, the drafts were weird. Peanut played Zyra. He's not the best at it right now. And I just felt like Hanwha weren't trying to play at their best. If you interview any of them, you talk to any of them, of course they're going to say that they did. you can look at this as like they're hiding strategies for semifinals and finals. I mean, that's a legitimate thing they could say, and I wouldn't say anything against it because it could be true. But I do think that when push comes to shove in terms of macro drafting, team fighting right now, no one really is anywhere close to Hanwha. Maybe Flying Oyster is like they have it in them to take some cool fights, or maybe they could get some leads like we saw TL get, obviously. But Hanwha's dominance, like, it can't really be overstated in this tournament. I think it looks really overblown, obviously, in this format where they played 4 games, they're 4-0. I mean, how many times have we seen a Korean team go out of groups in Worlds or an MSI undefeated? It's happened a lot, right?
Yeah.
But when they're the only one that's got that incredible record, they do look like they stand out so much more. When you only have 5 teams and everyone else has had big blemishes, maybe Flying Oyster a little bit less, but everyone else, like when you look at KC, you're like, ooh, there was some really rough games there. You look at TS and you're not confident about it at all. It just feels like Hanwha just have to go through the motions, and then they'll be lifting a trophy, tomorrow. That's what it feels like right now. And as hyped as I am as an LCK fan and LCK caster and LCK region representative, I am for that. Like, I kind of wish we had like another Korean team here that could challenge them or something, where anyone else could show up, because it feels like when Hanwha win this one, it feels like a walkover almost. Like, I don't even feel like hype. Like when T1 came in as a 4th seed and won Worlds, again, and they had to fight their way through it. It was a tough finals, and they were challenged the whole way. You're like, fuck yeah, we did it! Like, yes, like that's what you want. That's where you feel like you really earned it. This one, like, Hanwha's gonna win, and we're gonna be like, okay, like, yeah, we are the best. It wasn't interesting though. Did anyone even like try to stop us? Like, it doesn't feel earned, but we'll see. Maybe like Flying Oyster will upset, and we'll be eating our words on the next episode. But I just don't see it. I just don't see any way anyone could stop Hanwha. I don't know if they drop another game for the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. They did lose to a unique composition, not even that unique, but uncommon composition picked by KC, and now you get a little bit more diversity to it. You don't have to hide strats anymore. If you did have any cheese, you have a best of 5, so you have an extra game to play with. I think those kind of things bring out more creative diversity for the other teams. I just want to preface this that, like, this is probably the same conversation that a lot of us were having in 2022, right? It was like, okay, it's T1 and Gen G and JDG, right? And then or was it BLG? I forgot who it was. And DRX. DRX is there. That's kind of weird, right? This is the same conversation we had. It's procedural. It's like Faker's coming back to reclaim his throne back in the place where he last won back in 2016. He won in North America. Like, this is the same type of conversation. We still got to play it out. But the inverse of that is, man, what a perfect storm. I was saying earlier, we could have sent any other North American team. We sent TL. We could have sent, like, think about the run that Top Esports went through to get here. It's like, man, you could have sent Doonby and NIP. You could have sent Rookie and IG. You could have sent Anyone's Legends, a whole bunch of new guys like there. Instead, we got the fucking decrepit Top Esports that chokes on international stage. And guess what they're doing? They're choking on international stage. We didn't get G2, who we know can challenge for this, who we know can step up to this kind of challenge, to this stage. And we got KC, who's like, they're going to do their best, but they're kind of happy to be there. And if they lose, it's going to be like, well, it's great experience for the young guys. It's not going to be like, wow, we're disappointed we didn't win. There's no other team that's here that is disappointed.
Yeah, it's not like Callisto's like, oh, it's my fifth try, and I failed, and like, will I ever have another chance at international?
Yeah. It's not that, and I think that's why we feel that way, especially because the games have played out that way so far, and also, like, good on Dandy, good on all of Hanwha to be like, let's make this entertaining, let's draft fun, and it makes it look even more easy. But I think it's less of that. It's just more disrespect by the Hanwha Live players that are like, let's just pick these champions and style these dudes. And maybe they lock in now. But if we win, if Hanwha Life wins, then at least they did it with style. At least they weren't just like, hey, we're just gonna play standard and just dominate you, and this is the Korean way. We're robots. They were like, no, we're gonna Zaze is gonna play Quinn and like just pull out whatever he wants. Like I will appreciate that they're doing the entertainment to the max while still taking care of business. So that's kind of how I'd remember Hanwha Life in this one here.
Yeah,
All right.
I think that's
Yeah.
fair.
Any final thoughts here on the matches that we've had so far and the teams that we've had so far?
I've been pleasantly surprised by Flying Oyster. I think they actually have a pretty strong set of players who have seemingly somewhat small champion pools, but they keep getting away with it. So I hope they do well. I hope they do well because these kids they actually look like they've got some real potential. And it's funny to me that the kids who are like joking around and dancing and stuff like that, like and not looking like completely devastated after the one loss they took, like the ones who are having fun, are the ones who are actually like able to get it done. Whereas Casey and TL had some big chances to get it done and whiffed it. And obviously the same with top esports, like who completely botched their run. So I think that positive attitude is something we've seen from teams like DRX in the past, and I've loved how Flying Oyster have just approached this tournament as like, look, we're probably not going to win this thing. Like we're not fan favorites either. We're kind of the odd team in the group, but we're just going to have fun with it and play our best games. And they've been playing better games than almost anybody. Better games than anyone than Hanwha. I mean, they're definitely the second best team. So this is a team that I feel like people who were going to root for TL, maybe you can just root for Flying Oyster instead now, because this team is just super fun, and I want to see those personalities more.
Yeah. Here's your North American through line. It's head coach Chowie, who was part of TSM for the little while, did the post Bjergsen TSM, brought over Maple. He had a really good quote, because I just think that we don't really think a lot about how coaches are create their systems. He said, I must not put young players handling a 6-man roster. I must not put young players through pain, as it could ruin them. Not everyone can endure until the end. I clearly explain the roles of substitutes. Since I've faced hard times as a player, I know what to avoid to ruin a player. Like, that's so fascinating that his mindset is about not putting the player under undue stress and undue pressure that leads them to, like spiraling a little bit. Even though it's 6-man, all 6 players, both substitutes, very treasured in it. And I think that's the kind of like coach that you want and the kind of story that you want to follow there. So shout outs to Chowie for setting that up and making CFO the underdog story of the tournament. That's been a lot of fun to track and watch. All right. Before we get to outlooks here on our matches and where we think some edges might be found in CFO versus Karmine Corp and Hanwha Life versus Top Esports, our final friend of the show deserves a shout out, and it's our friends over at Factor. Time to optimize your nutrition for the year? That's a question. Well, Factor has you covered with their chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well and easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat in 2 minutes, so you can feel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active, busy lifestyle. You just throw them in the fridge, and then you pop them in when you're ready to go. Lose up to 8 pounds in 8 weeks with Factor Keto Meals, which is based on a randomized controlled clinical style with Factor Keto. Results may vary depending on diet and exercise, but with 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week, it's easy to pick the meals tailored to your goals. You can choose from preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto, and reach your goals this year with ingredients you can trust and convenience that you can't beat. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use the code factorpodcast to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's factorpodcast at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Just to clarify, the hyperlink /Factor Podcast, and then also use the code Factor Podcast. We're just using all of that to get yourself
At least it's
50%
easy to
off.
remember. It's the same. Yeah.
It's exactly the same. 50% off your first box plus free shipping. Thanks to our friends over at Factor. They've got delicious combos. Love using them. All right. Finally, let's dive into the futures here, Wolf. CFO versus Carmine Corp. Again, KC only here because CFO got the job done against Top Esports. Huge stuff for Carmine Corp. They got to change their profile pictures back to the KC fan with the mask holding the flag, and got to do battle with them. What matchups here are most interesting? What lane matchups are most interesting here for you?
I mean, for this one, I think Doggo and Kaiwing, like Kaiwing has been really good. Doggo, I think, has had some big moments, so he's gotten a lot of credit for his big moments, but I think he's also had some games where he played well, but like he wasn't as big as, I think Kalist has been in his best games. I think that Yun obviously was in his best games. So I'm looking more towards Kaiwing rather than looking at what we're talking about Doggo as a player and like his team fighting and stuff. But the lane 2v2 gets quite interesting because I think Kalist has opted into, or maybe it's not his choice, but KC have opted into putting him into like Israel versus Varus matchups where he struggled in both the bottom lane, but then in the mid matchup when he goes to farm in the mid lane. And I'm a little bit worried about how that's going to go for him because Kaiwing has been so ruthless on even picks like the Alistair. He's like actually making plays and catching people. So that's one I think that KC should be a little bit cautious with how they're doing. I'd like to see them draft a little bit more carefully around the bottom lane 2v2. Maybe they're just going like, Kalist, you want to play Ezreal? You're playing Ezreal, doesn't matter. You think you can handle Varus? And he says yes. And then like be to a certain extent doesn't. I think Targamas has had some good moments, but his lane 2v2s where I've been most worried about Targamas, where we've seen some big errors occur. So
A little bit of a whoopsie.
Yeah, a little bit of a whoopsie, as I like to say, as you know, dGon.
I just listen for it. Listen for it. Friends of Wolf and Monte, listen for the little bit of a blank and a little bit of a whoopsie is a good one. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
I do think that in terms of like the mid lane matchup, Vladdy has been very strong. And I think a lot of the credit's been kind of pushed away from him for some reason this tournament, but he's actually played super well. And I think Honkyu and he both share similar champion pools. Like the Azir is a big one to watch out for. I think like Honkyu has it in him to kind of win the matchup and throughout the best of 5 outclass him. I just don't know if he will, because there's not a lot of data for me like in terms of these high stakes matches, especially when you come in as kind of a dark horse in the tournament of how Honkyu will perform, because he's just so young, right? Like we haven't seen this guy play a ton, but the same is true of Vladdy, right? Like obviously saw him in LEC playoffs, but that's a fun one for me. And also I guess how KC deal with the top lane substitutions and the swaps that come through. Because I every time I feel like I think I figured out exactly why they use driver in certain situations versus rest, like they do the opposite thing like in the next series, and I'm like, oh, maybe it's just maybe they have a plan that's their specific plan. It's not like this guy plays these and this guy plays these. It's hard to know, but that means it's hard for KC to know and prepare as well. I would favor CFO though in this matchup in general. Like I think I would probably predict them to win it 3-0 or 3-1. They just seem like a more well-rounded, more robust team right now than KC. They seem more consistent.
Yeah, I think the gap is the consistency and the surprise of the tournament for me, which is Genjia. Like he's been running the map here, and we've seen Yike. We've seen Yike and Yikes. We've seen both. We've seen a lot of Yikes, and I guess in the loss it was okay, but we've seen a lot of Yikes, and I wonder if Kalist is a little low on confidence, maybe a little shook, just because the last game that they did play where their tournament life was still in their hands, they put him on the Draven and he could not get the cash out like early enough, died in the top lane. I think it was just a bush kill because he wasn't paying attention, and from there the game kind of fell apart. Like when you pick a Draven comp, you're putting your hands in your AD carries you're putting your life in your AD carry's hands, and he wasn't able to deliver. He's young though, so maybe he doesn't know. So I worry about that. But and Doggo has looked like the AD carry that the LPL teams thought that they were getting when he spent time there. He's looked good. I think signs are pointing that way. I think unique drafts might be able to help out if Apples and I forgot the name of I see his face. It's Rez something. I can't remember. The head coach of KC.
I
The
can't
coach
help
of
you because I don't know exactly where you're fishing for here.
The name of the head coach of Carmen Corp. It's
Oh yeah, I don't know.
Reza.
I don't know that right now.
I gotta
I'm
find it.
looking
I
it up
gotta
now.
find it. I could have just
Now
said
the
nothing.
KC fans are coming for you, dGon, because you didn't know the coach's
Shit,
name.
I didn't know the coach's name. It's my fault. I'm sorry.
No, I don't know. I didn't know either.
Reha.
Yes.
It's apples and Reha. I remember apples. That's an English word. I have a friend named Reza, and so I was thinking Reza, and I was like, I don't know if that's right. Now I can't remember shit. All right. Anyways, maybe they can cook up something creative. But Chowie knows cheese. He played in North America, so he coached in North America. He's had to work his way on through all of it. I think they got that one as well. So CFO move on. Hunter Life top.
Real. Thank you guys for watching. Please continue to support us. Make sure you use all the codes.
I can't believe that Secret Agent Kanavi is going to continue to just be second worst to Umpty, Kanavi and Umpty are being lumped in the same talking group right now. Yike, kind of close, but it's been bad.
I said this when I was casting him yesterday, and I really felt like I could. I thought it was like one of those, when you have a feeling about how a player is feeling and you think you're right about it. I felt really right about it when he had those two flashes where he tried to get the ganks to work and neither of them worked. I could really feel like in that
you
moment,
casted both of them yesterday.
Kanavi.
Kanavi, okay.
And I could really feel because he had those two moments where he tried to flash and get those kills. If you guys remember watching that series against Flying Oyster, and he came up short both times, once in the mid lane, once in the top lane, in game 2. And I felt like that was him trying to make an impact because he had otherwise throughout the entire tournament been invisible or actively hurting his team's chances. And I think he was like, I'm taking this into my hands. I'm gonna make these crazy plays. I see the angle. I'm not just gonna sit back. I'm gonna actually force this game to our advantage because I'm gonna make these extremely proactive plays. But you just misjudged both of them, right? And I think when you get into that kind of mindset where you're trying to prove something, it almost felt like I didn't know his exact mindset, to be fair to everyone, to be clear. But it really felt like he was aware of his performance being quite weak and people considering that he wasn't being proactive. His early games were his early games he's not there, and then in the late game he makes a wrong call or a positional error and his team loses the game because of it. That was what people were saying about him. And he's a Korean player, so he goes on DC Inside, no doubt, and FM Korea after these games. And because he's a Korean player, Koreans have things to say about him. And I'm sure he's reading a ton of negative comments and stuff. And I hope he's not, because that's not good for your mental health. But he may be. And I'd say most Koreans do, unfortunately. I see him scrolling, walking through, scrolling through their phones after a loss before they go and get into the team van. I think that, it's not just him, though, that's been underperforming, I think Cream has. I want to say I think Cream has arguably been the most consistent. 369 has not been dominant, he hasn't been himself. And Jackie Love, he's had some good moments, but he's also just lost games by way overextending, standing way too far forward. Remember when he got caught on Baron in that series yesterday, against Flying Oyster? I just don't think that this team feels so punishable and yet also so weak. It's not the team I saw win the first split of the LPL. You know what I
No,
mean? Like I just
yeah.
watched those games and I'm like, this doesn't seem like that team. And I don't know if it's people are sick because there's some stuff going around in Korea right now. A lot of people are getting sick. I don't know if people are just not motivated. And like winning the domestic split was more meaningful to them. I don't know if it's because they haven't had that much time to scrim because obviously lane swaps got removed, which is a big part of a lot of these team strategies. I don't know what it is, but like I feel like it's fake top esports. You know what I mean? Like it's not they just were replaced by five doppelgangers that put on stage and they're like I don't know from like a mid tier LEC team or something. You know? Like I don't. And I know everyone's gonna say like yeah, but top esports always chokes, but like most of these players are different. You know? And like I know we like to say like, oh, it's just a theme and this team always does this, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm like, I just saw the proof that like they should be better than this. I just watched it. So maybe, and I actually predicted top esports against Flying Oyster because I was like, okay, they're gonna lose. They lost a tough series, right? They're looking rough. They're gonna shape up. They're gonna tighten up. They're gonna prepare. They had an extra day, right? They had the day off before that game yesterday against Flying Oyster. So I thought they're gonna come back strong. I was like, there's no way top esports can't beat this team. Like they should be able to do it. I'm predicting them to do it. And then they just looked the same and lost horribly, right? Like so
Yeah.
I'm not gonna then go around go forward and say that in a few hours time from the time of this recording that top esports is going to get it together and beat Hanwha Life. I won't make that same mistake twice. I think Hanwha Life is going to dunk on them. I think it's going to be a 3-0. I don't think it's going to be close.
If they lose here, let's say Hanwha Life Esports lose here, I, that just makes a mess of a tournament. Like I don't know what to make. I wouldn't know what to make of the last like 4 or 5 days of this whole thing. It would be like, wow, this team was super dominant, and then in the match that mattered, they lost. Why? I couldn't tell you. Is it because they were dicking around and playing weird stuff like earlier, and then they tried to lock in, and then they weren't ready? Is it because Top Esports woke up and they're actually just a better team? Like you wouldn't be able to make concrete like statements from it if they end up losing.
Yeah, no, I
Just
mean
to put it into
it's like right
context how
now,
weird this would be.
100%. Like right now, I feel like I can't imagine any scenario in which top esports win. But if they do, we will have to like really pull out the magnifying glass, like maybe even a microscope, and like really try to figure out what went wrong. Or we'll know obviously on the day like Hanwha had some horrible drafts, and it might be quantifiable if it's like very obvious, but I don't think it will be. But yeah,
Yeah.
if the 1-3 team that didn't even get into the top four by their own merits beats the undefeated team to go to the finals, and then maybe unceremoniously gets defeated by CFO again. I don't know what it means, but it's definitely not good for the LCK. And right now, it's like it's been all LCK, right? It's all Hanwha. Hanwha's undefeated. Hanwha's great. Hanwha's trolling and still winning. This is amazing. So we are kind of due for some bad news. We did win like Worlds twice in a row recently. Also got MSI. We're kind of due for like a little bit of a LCK is dead, like kind of like arc because we, after I joined LCK, it was like okay, Dom won. It's great, and then it was a bit rough for a little while there until DRX won Worlds.
Yeah.
But since then, it's been all happiness for LCK. I don't think I can't predict this is where it's all going to fall apart. But remember, we were one game away from Gen G being the team that was in this tournament, and I don't even know what that would have looked like. I don't think it would have been as dominant, but
Yeah, that's true.
like that's a whole other parallel universe that we're not living in. I hope we're living in the universe though where Hanwha Life 3-0's top esports based on all the evidence and all the facts and all the data that we have and all the eye tests we've been able to have of top esports just being a flop. They should do it. And I guess if we were to predict, since it's going to happen before we do another show, I would predict Hanwha Life Esports to take the finals over CFO. Like I think that's the bracket I expect. I think that's the finals I expect. That's the results I expect. But I think CFO, even if they lose 3-0, I could see it being a good finals. I could see that finals being interesting.
Yeah.
If it's KC, they were the only team that beat Hanwha in a legitimate game in my mind throughout the entire tournament. So that's also kind of hype. They get a second chance. So I do feel like the finals will be cool, no matter what. I hope it's good games, and I think it will be, but I can't see any other world than Hanwha winning the tournament, lifting the trophy.
There it is. We'll leave you with that, everyone. This week's episode of Monte and Wolf. Thanks to all of our friends that helped sponsor the show. Thank you to everyone that weighed in with your your all pro LCK votes. We appreciated that. Some of you guys had some crazy, crazy takes. Make sure to let us know what you thought about this episode, about the tournament so far, about Fearless Draft coming back since it seems highly, highly likely. And remember to like and subscribe. Until then, we'll see you until the next episode of Monte Wolf.